Most people think spiritual awakening fills you with clarity, energy, and purpose. But what if the opposite is true? What if awakening doesn't ignite your life, but empties it? What if the loss of motivation you're feeling isn't a failure, but a necessary transformation? Carl Jung discovered that many people who experience profound spiritual breakthroughs suddenly feel drained, indifferent, or unable to care about anything. He found that this collapse of motivation isn't a sign that something has gone wrong. It's a sign that something deeper is waking up. Jung called this the paradox of awakening, the moment when seeing through life's illusions makes old goals feel meaningless. You become too conscious to return to your old life, but not yet transformed enough to know what comes next. This void can feel terrifying. It can feel like you've lost your identity, your purpose, and your fire. But Jung learned that this emptiness is not a dead end. It's the beginning of a psychological rebirth, a stripping away of ego-driven desires so that something authentic can emerge. Your old motivations were built on fear, conditioning, and social expectations. Awakening dissolves them so your real purpose can finally rise. In this video, we'll explore how Jung understood this process, why the void is essential, and how to navigate it consciously. If you've been wondering why nothing feels meaningful anymore, stay with me. This may be the explanation you've been searching for. Carl Jung noticed a pattern among people who experience sudden spiritual breakthroughs. Instead of becoming energized, many became strangely empty. Their motivation collapsed. Their ambitions dissolved. Their sense of direction vanished. Jung found that this wasn't a failure in their development. It was a sign that their awakening had gone deeper than they expected. When people see through the illusions that once fueled them, the old motivations naturally fall away. Goals built on fear, ego, approval, or social conditioning no longer make sense. Jung called this the awakening paradox, the moment when clarity brings confusion, when enlightenment feels like emotional exhaustion, when seeing the truth makes life feel strangely hollow. People often begin this journey expecting bliss, purpose, and inspiration. But instead, they find themselves unable to care about anything that used to drive them. They lie in bed wondering why nothing matters anymore, why achievements feel empty, why former dreams seem irrelevant. Jung saw that this wasn't depression, even though it mimics it. It was the breakdown of an identity they had outgrown. He compared this state to the alchemical negrido, the blackening phase, the stage where the old self dissolves completely before a new form can appear. In this state, a person becomes psychologically suspended, to awake to return to their old illusions, but not yet reborn into a new authenticity. This limbo feels like a crisis, but Jung insisted it is a necessary part of transformation. He discovered that trying to force old motivations back to life only makes things worse. It's like trying to push a butterfly back into its cocoon. It doesn't work, and it harms the process. Instead, Jung encouraged people to understand that this emptiness is sacred. It is a space of profound psychological reorganization, a clearing out of false desires, a quieting of ego noise, a stripping away of what no longer fits. Jung emphasized that awakening destroys the counterfeit fuel of the personality before the deeper self can emerge. This is why the emptiness can feel terrifying. It is the death of everything familiar. But it is also the beginning of individuation, the birth of authenticity. To navigate this phase, Jung believed we must surrender to the process rather than resist it. Only then can something new begin to form. Jung worked with many patients who fell into this strange emptiness after awakening. One of the most striking cases was a woman named Maria. She had devoted years to meditation, spiritual texts, and consciousness practices. Then, during a deep meditation session, she experienced what mystics call ego death. Her sense of personal identity dissolved into something vast and universal. For a short time afterward, she felt euphoric. She felt connected to everything. She felt free from fear and free from the worries of her former life. But then everything changed. Maria found herself unable to get out of bed. She stopped eating regularly. She quit her job without hesitation. She ended relationships not out of sadness, but out of total indifference. She told Jung, "I've seen the truth. Nothing matters." Goals felt like illusions to her. Achievements felt like empty games. Love felt like attachment. Work felt like distraction. She said she could no longer pretend that life had meaning in the way she once believed. Jung immediately recognized the stage she was in. It wasn't depression. It was the negrido, the symbolic death before rebirth. Jung had studied alchemy for years and understood its metaphors as descriptions of psychological transformation. The negrido was the dissolving of the old identity, the breaking apart of who you thought you were, the melting down of your psychic structures so that something new could emerge. But Jung also realized something dangerous. Modern people can trigger this deep state without understanding what they're entering. They awaken to emptiness without a map. They see through illusions without knowing how to live beyond them. Jung called this premature enlightenment. It's like performing inner surgery without knowing how to heal afterward. Maria had awakened to a higher truth, but she lacked the psychological framework to integrate it. She became too conscious to live unconsciously, yet not conscious enough to live with full awareness. She was suspended in between. Jung spent months guiding her, not trying to restore her old motivations, but helping her understand the sacredness of this emptiness. He taught her that she was not broken. She was in the chrysalis phase, where everything becomes formless before transformation. This realization was the first step toward her psychological rebirth. As Jung continued his work with patients like Maria, he uncovered a profound truth about motivation. He discovered that most human ambition isn't authentic at all. It's shaped by fear, conditioning, and the desire to fit into society. Jung called this persona-driven motivation. It comes from the mask you wear to gain approval. It's fueled by the fear of not being enough. It pushes you to chase goals that weren't truly yours. Career success, relationship achievements, social status. Jung found that these desires often hide deeper emotional wounds. He referred to this phenomenon as purpose poisoning. People believe they're pursuing meaningful goals, but in reality, they're trying to avoid feelings of inadequacy, rejection, or insignificance. This is why so many people achieve success and still feel empty afterward. Jung realized that spiritual awakening destroys these false motivations. When people see through the illusions that once drove them, those ambitions lose their power. This collapse creates the feeling of emptiness so many experience after awakening. Jung discovered something crucial about this stage. The psyche cannot return to old motivations once the illusion has been seen through. Trying to go back only causes more suffering. He warned that forcing yourself into previous goals is like trying to bring a dead system back to life. Jung compared it to reanimating a corpse. It looks familiar, but the life is gone. Instead, he explained that this emptiness signals a deeper transformation. The false self is dissolving. The ego's motivations have run their course. The old fuel no longer burns. Now the psyche must uncover something real beneath all the conditioning. This is where Jung introduced two forms of motivation. Persona-driven motivation, which comes from fear and social expectation, and self-driven motivation, which comes from the authentic core of your being. Awakening destroys the former before the latter can emerge. This creates a gap between who you were and who you are becoming. Jung emphasized that this gap can last months or even years, not because something has gone wrong, but because authentic motivation grows slowly, like a seed pushing through dark soil. He observed that many people panic during this stage. They try to resurrect old achievements, or they become stuck in paralysis because nothing feels meaningful. Neither option leads to authenticity. The only way forward is to consciously navigate the void, to understand that emptiness is not a failure. It is the essential clearing needed for true purpose to arise. As Jung studied hundreds of cases, he discovered that the emptiness after awakening wasn't the end of motivation. It was the beginning of a new kind of motivation that the ego couldn't recognize. Jung called this soul motivation. It doesn't feel like pressure. It doesn't feel like urgency. It doesn't feel like striving. Instead, it feels like a quiet pull from within, a gentle invitation rather than a demand. Jung noticed that people in the awakening void often overlook this new motivation. They expect purpose to feel intense, fiery, or ambitious. But soul motivation begins as a whisper, not a shout. One of Jung's patients, David, illustrated this beautifully. Before his awakening, he became a lawyer to impress his parents and ensure financial security. His motivations were built on anxiety and external expectations. After awakening, those motivations collapsed completely. For months, David felt lost and directionless. But gradually, he began noticing subtle impulses. He felt drawn to spend time in nature. Long walks gave him a sense of peace he couldn't explain. During these walks, ideas about environmental conservation began to surface. He told Jung, "It doesn't feel like ambition. It feels like remembering something I always knew." Jung recognized this as ontological motivation, motivation rooted in being, not fear. Instead of trying to become something, David was expressing what he already was. Jung found that soul motivation operates differently from ego motivation. It moves in cycles. It appears and disappears like seasons. It collaborates with life instead of forcing life. It opens doors instead of pushing through them. It doesn't drain energy, it generates it. People guided by soul impulses often accomplish more with less effort because they're moving in harmony with their inner nature. But Jung warned that you can't force soul motivation to appear. You can't think your way into authenticity. You can only create space for it. This is why Jung taught something he called motivational fasting. It's a period of consciously refraining from forcing goals or seeking quick answers. This fasting creates room for subtle desires to emerge, desires that come from truth, not fear. Jung believed that if you tried to fill the emptiness too quickly with projects, goals, or new ambitions, you miss the deeper calling rising within you. The void is not empty, it is gestating something, and your only task is to listen, to notice what stirs in your quiet moments, to sense what brings warmth to your chest or aliveness to your body, because that is the voice of your soul beginning to speak. After years of studying this mysterious transformation, Jung developed a clear three-stage process for moving from emptiness to authentic purpose. He called this the psychological resurrection. It describes the journey from the death of the false self to the birth of the true self. The first stage is conscious dissolution. This stage requires surrender. It means allowing old motivations to die without clinging to them. Jung observed that people often resist this stage, which only prolongs their suffering. To help patients move through it, he created a technique called sacred grieving. Sacred grieving is the process of acknowledging and honoring the ambitions you once held. Instead of trying to revive them, you consciously let them go. Some patients wrote letters to their old dreams. They thanked them for the energy they once provided. They acknowledged the role they played, and then they released them with compassion. This grieving clears space for something new to grow. The second stage is active imagination. This is where the psyche begins to reveal new impulses, desires, and images. Jung instructed patients to sit quietly and ask, "What wants to be born through me?" Then they waited, without forcing an answer. The images that arose were not goals. They were expressions of the emerging self. One patient, Maria, began receiving images of herself teaching children in nature. She dismissed it at first, but Jung encouraged her to trust what surfaced. Soon, she started volunteering with environmental education programs. Her energy returned, not because she sought success, but because she followed what felt alive. The third stage is symbolic living. Jung explained that once new impulses appear, you must reorganize your life around them. This doesn't mean abandoning practicality. It means paying attention to symbols, synchronicities, and intuitive signals. Living symbolically means letting life guide you as much as you guide it. It means following fascination instead of obligation, curiosity instead of strategy, alignment instead of ambition. Jung found that people who lived symbolically often accomplished more with less effort. They weren't pushing, they were responding. They weren't chasing meaning. They were allowing meaning to shape their life from within. Jung emphasized that this process cannot be rushed. The psyche has its own timing. Trying to speed it up leads to spiritual bypassing, pretending to be motivated when you're still dissolving. But those who move through these stages consciously emerge with a purpose that cannot be broken. A purpose that comes from the soul, not the ego. And once it arrives, it changes everything. In his later work, Jung uncovered the final stage of post-awakening transformation. He called it incarnated purpose. This is the moment when your authentic essence begins to express itself through your everyday life. It is not about finding a mission, it is about becoming the mission. People who reach this stage don't chase goals the way they once did. They are moved by something deeper. They work from overflow, not exhaustion. Their actions emerge from inner alignment rather than external pressure. Jung noticed that these individuals respond to life rather than forcing life to obey them. They develop a sensitivity to synchronicity. They notice meaningful coincidences. They allow subtle signs to guide their decisions. This doesn't make them passive. It makes them attuned. Their life becomes a collaboration with something greater than the personal ego. Jung saw this beautifully in a patient named Alina. Before her awakening, she was a driven marketing executive. Her ambitions were fueled by the desire to achieve, succeed, and be recognized. But after awakening, those motivations collapsed. For 2 years she felt directionless, floating in emptiness. Gradually, she began feeling impulses to create art, not for success, not for attention, simply because creating felt natural. It felt like breathing. She painted only for herself, but her artwork began to attract others. People said her paintings helped them heal, helped them grieve, helped them reconnect with themselves. Alina realized that her purpose wasn't to become an artist. Her purpose was to express healing through beauty. The art was simply the vehicle. Jung called this soul expression. When your being expresses itself through whatever form is most natural, purpose stops being something you chase. It becomes something that flows out of you. But Jung also warned that living from soul purpose requires courage. This path often leads you away from socially approved success. You may earn less at first. You may confuse others. You may walk a path that makes no logical sense. But you will feel alive. You will feel aligned. You will feel whole. Jung believed that this alignment is the highest form of human development. When you allow the life that wants to live through you to take shape. When you trust the quiet pull of your soul more than the loud demands of society. When you stop forcing purpose and start embodying it from within. This, Jung concluded, is true individuation. If this journey resonates with you, remember this. Your emptiness is not a failure. It is a beginning, a clearing, a psychological pregnancy. Jung taught that the death of old motivations creates space for something deeper to emerge. You're not losing purpose. You're preparing for a purpose, rooted in authenticity, not fear. So if this spoke to you, make sure to like this video. Subscribe to Psychology Insights for more Jungian wisdom and deep psychological teachings, and share your thoughts below. Together we're building a community of people who understand this transformation. The void is not the end. It is the doorway to who you were always meant to become.